Welcome to the garage. I'm Robert, and this is Haslipcycleworks. This episode today is actually part 2 on the build series for Project Mini Trike. If you recall, in part 1, we welded up our frame and our forks and then assembled those. Today, the goal is to turn Project Mini Trike into a roller. Start off with, I went to gopowersports.com and ordered a few parts. The first being this 10-inch multi-piece wheel. There's a tube in there and a tire. Have to run the tube because it is a multi-piece wheel. Comes with the bearings already installed. And another good thing about the multi-piece wheel is it's a lot easier to change a tire out. No more try to slip the lip of the tire, the bead over the rim and trying to dismount and all that garbage. You don't have to worry about that. You simply take the nuts and bolts out, the two pieces fall apart, and that's it. Tube comes out, wheel falls out, grab your new tire, sandwich it all together, tighten your nuts and bolts down, and you're done. The whole setup came from Go Power Sports. Of course, links to everything in the description. Also ordered a set of the racing hubs for the rear. We will run a 1-inch solid axle on Project Mini Trike. So these are made from 1 inch, and they are the, I guess you can call them the 3-lug pattern. Got some other parts over there that also came from Go Power Sports, but they weren't bought brand new. They were actually part of a previous project that we never finished because the driver's not mature enough, let's say, for the go-kart. So I may or may not have robbed the rear axle assembly off of that. Now, I believe it was a 52-inch long axle, which is going to be way too wide for Project Mini Trike. We can cut that down, no problem. But yeah, so that 10-inch wheel, and it is running a 3-inch wide by 10 tire. It's the MB90 tuk-tuk, and it was made in Thailand. We'll see how that treats us, but again, all that came from Go Power Sports. The rear hubs from Go Power Sports, and the rear axle, the bearings, the collars, and the other parts on the rear axle all came from Go Power Sports too. I'm going to show you that now. And as you can see, yeah, that axle is way too wide for Project Mini Trike. It would be stable. My only concern is when we really start ripping on it, we would bend that axle. I know 1-inch solid bar sounds like it's pretty strong, but when you get up to speed and you've got, 100, well, let's be honest, 200 plus pounds on this thing. Yeah, 1 inch, not so strong. But the axle did come from Go Power Sports. The bearings, the bearing retainers, the quick sprocket changer, adapter, I guess you can call. That came from them. The sprocket came from Go Power Sports. And the reason I went with this was the Mini Trike is going to fill double duty. It's going to not only be a mini trike and just be out there tearing it up on the streets. I will not be doing this for off-road use, but I also want to be able to put some sleeves on the tires and make a mini drift trike. Disc brake or rotor, disc rotor did not come from Go Power Sports, but I will link that in the description. but the hub adapter did. So we're going to be cutting down that axle and using the hubs that I showed you from Go Power Sports. We'll be mounting a set of some pretty sweet wheels and tires. Now to install our front wheel, it's rather simple. Bobby Hammond over at Metal Fab Creations, who built the kit, has already pre-drilled these for 5/8 inch bolts. And the bearing takes a 5/8 inch bolt through to both sides. So what I've done is run down to the local hardware store, and this is a 5/8 by 8 inch long bolt. I went a little longer than what we needed because it's easier to cut some threads off than it is to add threads. So 5/8 by 8, corresponding washer. And we have another washer and a nylon lock nut. I may swap this out for a castle nut style where it's got the grooves cut in it and you can put a cotter pin through it. But we'll give this a go and see if it backs out any. It should be pretty good, but just in case, we always have that castle nut option. A washer, and we're just doing this finger tight for now. But as you can see, there's a slight problem. What we need is for this wheel to be centered in these forks. So what we need now are some spacers to space this wheel out. Now, if you went with a wider front wheel and tire combination, the stubs that come off the wheel that hold the bearings may fit perfectly here. But I like the skinny tire look up front. So what we're gonna have to do is come up with some spacers. You can actually go to the hardware store and purchase a spacer that will fit perfectly over this 5/8 bolt. And what you need to do is measure the distance from your fork end plates and then subtract the width of the wheel at the bearings and then divide that by 2. And that will give you spacer length to center the wheel perfectly. So you can go to the hardware store and you can purchase those spacers. You may need to cut them down. You may get lucky and find ones that are just perfect. Or just use a piece of tubing that the 5/8 bolt will fit in, cut it to the correct length, and there's your spacers. So this is what I'm talking about. You could buy just a piece of tubing. You want something a little heavier wall so that it slides up against that bearing. And of course, this is the wrong size. But you would just cut it to fill that gap on both sides. And that will center your wheel up once you snug that nut and bolt down. So remember, it's the width between the axle mount tabs on the fork minus the width of the wheel at the bearings, and then divide by 2, and that'll give you your 2 spacer lengths you need to center your wheel. So I went ahead and picked up our spacers, and I was intending on purchasing a piece of tubing and cutting it to the length we needed. But when I went to the hardware store, they actually had the right size spacers. So no cutting or grinding or anything. They should fit perfect. So in my situation with this wheel and the fork, I needed a total of 3 inches of spacer, and each one of these is 1.5 inches. So just like I said earlier, distance between the forks minus the width of the wheel at the bearings was 3 inches. Divide by 2, 1.5 inches. there we go. Fits in there perfect. Of course, I haven't snugged it down. Of course, I'm not going to leave those shiny. I'm actually going to paint those black so that they kind of disappear with the wheel, since there is a good amount of spacer there. Don't want it to stand out too much. And the washers, we'll paint those the same color that we paint the forks, which, of course, you have a 50-50 chance of guessing the color for. If the wheel's black, you know the frame and forks are going to be red. It's going to be very sweet. It's going to be very fast. It's going to be very low. And it is going to be badass. All right, so now we need to turn our attention to the rear of Project Mini Trike. And today, received a box from Go Power Sports. And in that box is, insert drum roll here, a pair of the black Douglas wheels, made in the USA. Douglas wheels, Douglas Wheel Technology, I think is what DWD stands for. These are the 6-inch wheels. Got 2 of those. And also have 2 13x5x6 2-ply tires. Not even going to try to pronounce the name, but it's got a pretty wicked tread pattern. And it looks almost identical to the tread pattern on the front of the wheel on Project Mini Trike. 2 of these and 2 of the wheels. So what I'm going to do now is, real quick off camera, get these mounted up, put just enough air in it to set the bead, and we'll throw them on Project Mini Trike. So after a little bit of struggling, a little bit of off-camera cussing, got our tires mounted on our wheels, and the reason they were such a struggle is Go Power Sports actually tells you that this number is a little exaggerated. So they're not quite a 13 tall tire, not quite 5 inches wide. They are 6 inches for the rim size. But as you can tell, there's a little bit of stretch on these. You can kind of see. But I think that looks kind of cool, especially for this application. So far, these rims are pretty sweet. Definitely going to put links to all this down in this description. So I think what's next is we need to determine the length of our axle so that we can cut it. And the best way to do that is to take our hubs, and what we'll do is we'll go ahead and mount one of the wheels to the hub, get the spacing from the back side of the rim to the frame the way we want it, so we know what the track is, and then duplicate it on the other side, and then mark on the outer edge of the axle. We'll mark that, double check all of our measurements, and then we'll take it to the saw and we'll cut our axle down. What I've done is flip the front wheel around so that the rotation of the tire is correct. I tightened up the 2-piece wheel hardware. I tightened up the front axle bolt. I tightened neck bolt. Still moves really smooth. I cut our axle and beveled the edges. You saw that. I tightened the hardware for our bearing keepers. I put some collars on. I tightened down the hubs on both sides. And I need to go ahead and tighten these up. These are just finger tight. Tighten them up just a little bit and put some air in the front tire. I've got the recommended PSI in our rear tires. That seems to be tracking true. So I'm going to go ahead and put some air in this, tighten up those lug nuts. And then I think we're going to hop on this thing and roll it down the hill in front of my house. And just see how it feels and see what it looks like. Well, we couldn't really see much, but she rolled real nice, real smooth, and tracked very straight. No complaints at all. Seems like we did a really good job getting our frame together. Our forks are straight. Everything's at the right angle. I mean, I'm excited. I think that's going to be it for this one, and we will see you in part 3. Until then, guys, get up, get out there, and do it.